Welcome to Chamber Chat, a program put together by the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce to keep you informed of what's going on in your community and in your chamber. The first guest on this edition of Chamber Chat is Dave Ryan, Executive Director of SWED. Welcome to Chamber Chat, Dave.
Thank you, Tony. Great to be here.
I think this might be, I mean, you've done many of these types of programs over the years, but I think this might be your first visit to Chamber Chat.
Probably the first visit. And
yeah, we're going to have to.
Hopefully not the last.
I hope we cleaned up for you and made you feel welcome.
It's always warm atmosphere here.
Well, let's start with a question that you've been asked many times over the years. If there may be 9 people left in Wicomico County that doesn't know what SWED is.
Okay.
Can you give us a little overview of what SWED is?
Yeah, sure. SWED we're a nonprofit corporation. We founded in 1968. We're charged with strengthening our local economy by attracting new jobs and investment to the area and by retaining and growing the existing job base we have. We've been at it almost 48 years, and we've stayed pretty true to that mission. We target those industries and those companies that import dollars into our community. So it's kind of like the other side of tourism. Mm-hmm. We help all businesses, and we invite all businesses to contact us on how we can help their particular business. So along the way, we're looking for some diversity, so we're less dependent upon any one particular company, any one particular industry for economic viability. So it's been a great organization for mm-hmm. 4 or 5 decades sure. now. But we don't operate in a silo. We seek partnerships throughout the community, sure. throughout the state of Maryland, and the country. The Chamber and BBSI has been a great, terrific partner of SWED, and we hope we reciprocate. But we have a small organization, but our wingspan is fairly broad thanks to those partnerships. Yeah,
it certainly is broad, and the reputation precedes SWED. But ironically, I was founded in 1968 as well. And I have...
that doesn't mean you were born in 1968, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it means. But over the years, so now how long have you been the executive director of SWED?
I've been here a little over 22 years now.
Yeah, 22 years. Yeah. You might say you've been there a while. Over 22 years, and certainly over 4, almost 5 decades, what kind of changes have you seen, prior to you joining SWED, and then certainly over the last 22 years since you've been a part of SWED? Yeah,
sure. We've seen, I think, Tony, that the largest change we've seen, and I think if you ask most people, they may see this, is a change from an industrial-based economy to a more service sector-based economy. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that play out in our community, we've seen that play out in the state of Maryland, and we've seen that play out in our country. And we're getting to a point where you have some folks that say, I wish we could go back to those days where we had production in factories and those good paying jobs with benefits. And then you have another side that says, those days are gone. It's a new normal. So let's go out the entrepreneurship route. Let's seek new technologies, new innovations. And I would suggest it's not an either or proposition. It's going to be different today and 10 years from today. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. I mean, we're blessed. About 8% of our job base is in manufacturing. It's almost a mirror image of that in the United States. Maryland's not necessarily known as a high manufacturing-oriented state, but we mirror the country in a very large way. That being said, we've seen great changes in that industrial base. Remember the textile plants in the 1970s here, Gant and D&S and Manhattan Shirt. Then the cluster developed in the defense industries in the 80s. With Grumman came to town, K&L Microwave Blossom, Maytech came to town. Electronics and the microwave sector fueled some growth in the 90s, and perhaps life science today with the growth of Jubilant Cadista Pharmaceuticals or Trinity, Stero, Zoetis, and Tishcon Corporation. So we've seen great changes, but I think that transition from and it's been very challenging from an industrial base to a service sector based has been the largest change that I've seen.
We're rebounding, if you will, from the largest economic downturn since the Great Depression.
Sure.
I've always heard in the 12 years that I've been on the shore, I've always heard and seen where the shore has been over the years kind of shielded from the peaks on the extremes, but also shielded from the very low valleys. I have found that to be true. But what are your thoughts on that, and how do you see us pulling out of this recovery?
Yeah. Well, I think it's this past Great Recession, as we call it, has been a tale of two time frames for us in Wicomico County and the Lower Shore as a whole. Prior to the recession, we were growing jobs at a far, far greater rate than the nation or the state of Maryland. As we talked about and illustrated during the past chamber forecast, that curve was a very steep curve in terms of job creation for us here in Wicomico. That being said, those jobs being created were in virtually all economic sectors, largely driven by the construction and the professional business services. So, prior to the run-up to the start of the official recession, we were getting jobs in the construction. These are contractors, wall trimmers, pavers, roofers, HVAC pros, those type of occupations. In the professional business services, these are architects, engineers, surveyors, paralegals, mortgage brokers, real estate folks, things like that, all tied really to that residential construction market. So I think as a rural area, and probably most rural areas are more dependent upon residential construction than perhaps the metropolitan areas. Right. So those same forces that helped us going into the recession, hurt coming out of the recession, and I think that's what we're seeing. So the recovery for us, one, because we had a higher yield curve going into the recession, we had a longer way to go down, and two, the reliance on the residential construction market. So the yield curve coming out of the recession has been much flatter. So if it seems like it's been a very sluggish, slower recovery than the state of Maryland or the country, it's likely because it has been for us. Now, that being said, recent trends, we're seeing a higher level of employment, we're seeing more job creation, we're seeing more business formations, we're seeing strong sales of residential homes. In the next phase, hopefully, we'll see some price points increasing on the average home price and median home price, and that gets us back into a stronger growth mode.
You pulled out your crystal ball just a little bit then, but that's the next question. Pulling out your crystal ball, what do you think, how does the economic future look for the shore? And how do we grow that economic base again?
I'm from Salisbury, and I think it's the greatest in Wicomico. I think it's the greatest community on earth. I just don't know if I could sell any other community. It's just a great privilege to be able to do that. So I think the future is tremendous. We've had challenges before. This is a community that can overcome challenges, and we will overcome the next 4 or 5 years in terms of the continued transition of our economy. We can do 4 things, Tony. We can continue to attract. As I alluded to earlier, nothing lasts forever. So we saw an industrial base change from textiles to defense to electronics to life science. We have to continue to attract. Attrition will occur, and we have to replace those jobs. Second thing we can do is work with our existing business base, which is perhaps the most important thing we can do, because most businesses next year will likely generate 75–80%, a very significant portion of their revenue from companies or customers they already have. Right. As a correlation, most communities will generate most of their new jobs next year from companies that exist in the marketplace today. So it's imperative upon us to pay attention to that business base that's already here. The third thing we can do, and as you know very, very well at BBSI, is to let's fill the jobs we have open today. Sure. There are jobs out there, albeit different than they were 20 years, 30, 40 years ago, but there are jobs. So how can we, not just me and not just you, but collectively as a community, and let's elevate that conversation. How can we connect people that want to work with the job openings that are available? And better yet, how can we give those people or equip those people with the skill sets that are demanded by industry today? The fourth thing we can do is let's grow our own organically. Right. If there ever was an entrepreneurial community at Salisbury, all 4 schools of the university here, so SU, are endowed by a private individual or an entrepreneur. Think of the microwave sector that grew. We can trace the roots right back to the founding of K&L Microwave in the early 70s. They were all startup companies. Think of the spin-offs from the founding of Purdue Farms in 1920. Think of all the spin-offs over the years. What would we look like had that not happened? So entrepreneurship, and look no further than SU. Look at the business plan competitions. There's hundreds of new business plans being presented each year by students and entrepreneurs throughout the Mid-Atlantic area. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that are generated, and invested in these new business ventures. We saw the Radcliffe Foundation. We've got Shore Hatchery. We've got Bernstein. Shark Tank came 2 years in a row. It's a terrific time for entrepreneurship, new innovation, and new business formation. So I think going forward, it doesn't have to be an either-or proposition, but entrepreneurship is a key component to driving us in the future.
I'm getting the hook in terms of time, but I do have one question that I've always wanted to ask you. With all the businesses that you talk to and the people that you talk to from across the country that talk about moving to the area or living in the area or even opening a business in the area, what is it that makes the Salisbury, Wicomico area so easy for you to sell?
If there's one, and there's a myriad of factors, but if there was one, I would say fabric of community. Let's create an environment where people want to live. Let's create an environment where people want to work. And that, more than any other, typical site search starts at a regional level. Corporate real estate people, they're going to find a building that meets their needs, and throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, say, they're going to find multiple sites. I promise you. It's then that the decision making goes to the all-important quality of life factors. Okay, if I move to this community, if I start here, what kind of environment will I be living in? Where will my kids go to school? What kind of recreational opportunities are there? What kind of house can I afford? What's the diversity of the community like? Those type of questions. So the fabric of community, it's always been that, Tony, and I think it's going to continue to be that for a long time to come. Fortunately, we're a terrific community. We're a very organized, we're a very charitable community. It's a terrific place to live.
I couldn't echo those thoughts any better myself. So, Dave, thanks so much for joining us on Chamber Chat, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
We'd like to give you an opportunity now to take a look at the upcoming events with the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce.